So we have said pray about it. We said research it. That's going to help you make that list, right? And then list it, write it down. The last tip I'm going to give you now and leave you hanging is, hey, I'm Andrea Olson. I've been leading worship and training worship leaders for nearly 20 years, and my mission is to support worship leaders just like you in volunteer-supported ministries because I know what it's like. I've been there. It's amazing, but you have a big job, and sometimes you might feel a little bit alone. But I'm here to remind you that you aren't. We'll cover spiritual and leadership growth, practical resources, and get encouragement from other worship leaders from all over the world. I truly want to see you live and lead from the overflow, not the overwhelm. So grab a cup of tea or coffee and join me. Welcome to the Overflow Worship Podcast. Well, I don't know about you, but this time of year gets me really excited for spring. The weather is just hinting that it's around the corner, maybe. And if you are in the Midwest, like I am, I'm in Minnesota. It's a little bit of a hesitancy though, because we actually don't know. We could have winter through the middle of April, sometimes the end of April. So this really nice weather though has made me excited for spring. And wherever you are, I hope that you're getting hints of a turn of season, change of season as well. So I wanted to kick off this episode, first of all, by pointing out that we are starting something new. If you haven't noticed, look around. We're on video. You can see me. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see me. And so for those of you listening on your favorite podcast platform, if you want to see the videos, now you can do it. You can go to YouTube and see these as video podcasts. I've got a really nice studio set up and I've got my keyboard here in case we ever do any music. It's just awesome. And I'm so excited about it. So that is the first thing I just wanted to point out. And second of all, I want to start something new on the podcast. And that is, I just want to share a verse or a quote or something that is encouraging me or speaking to me right off the bat. So I am going to start with the book of Exodus and chapter 17, verse 15. It's right after the Israelites had just won a battle and Moses built an altar and called it "The Lord is my banner." Now, I've been reading through the Old Testament. I just started over again in Genesis in January. It's actually about the 5th year that I've been doing a read through the Bible plan. I choose a different one every year. And it has been so amazing how God just continues to open up my eyes to new things. And that verse, "The Lord is my banner," that stuck out to me. And honestly, I hadn't really thought much about it before. It hadn't stuck out to me before. But, the word banner basically means like, look at me. I like, look at this thing. I want you to see this. And so the altar named "The Lord is my banner." It's like, everybody look at this altar and remember what God has done. And, I want to continue to live my life like that, where I am creating altars, whether they're figurative or they're like specific things, whether I write it down or it's just something that I use to remember the things that He's done by, because it's easy for us to forget. And so I've just been thinking a lot about that and processing through like, man, how is my life a banner for the Lord? And my worship is a banner. And, as a worship leader, for those of you who are listening, you're worship leaders or you're on a worship team. And it's one of those things where it's like, man, yeah, I'm standing up there and I'm basically waving my banner of, just declaring the goodness of God and the things that He's done in my life. And that's what worship is. It's waving the banner of His goodness. And so I just want to, first of all, encourage you to think about that through the lens of your own life, from a standpoint of maybe you need to set up some banners, maybe you need to set up some altars, or just write them down in a journal, because it is so encouraging to look back and remember the things that God has done, the way that He's provided, and the ways that He has answered prayer or answered prayers in ways that are different than what you thought possible. And then second, to just be encouraged. Sometimes worship leading can be hard. And if you're a worship leader, there's very little of your job that's actually spent on the stage. However, when you are on the stage, just remember that that's what you're doing. And you might not always get the response from people that, you might be hoping for, or that might show that they are engaging. But just remember, you're waving the banner of his goodness. And if it's a blessing to so many people, whether they see it or not, or whether they show it or not. And so I just want to encourage you that what you're doing is so needed and so necessary and so valuable. And, you are definitely needed where you are. There's purpose in the placement that God has on your life. And I know that there are reasons why he's placed you in that community. And so I just wanted to encourage you with that today on the tails of the verse that is speaking to me. So, as we move into the content for today's episode, I'm going to share with you some practical tips today. A lot of times we have guests on the podcast, and then other times when it's just me, I will share the things that I'm learning spiritually, or we've done goal setting so far this year. But I am going to share a few little tips that I have put together over the last nearly 20 years of leading worship and mentoring worship leaders. And I call it the Setlist checklist. Now, if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you've been hearing over the last couple of months that we're actually giving this in PDF form away for free. So I'm going to tease a little bit, just a few of the items on this checklist, and then you can actually get it yourself for free, which is pretty exciting. So I'm going to dive in and just share with you the things that I have learned, and I have actually tested and proved this. Proved. I don't know. All of a sudden I get inside my head with grammar. But anyway, it's proven and I've tested it and it works. It really does. And it's just basically a parameter. Do you have to absolutely follow every single one of these things? Well, no, obviously not. You may have a system that works for you, but if you listen, maybe you'll learn something new, because these parameters are meant to serve as a filter for you to just help you put together a set list every single time that is meaningful and engaging and well thought out. So without any further delay, let's dive in. So number one, the first thing on my set list checklist is pray about it. Now, you probably are like, well, yeah, duh, I'm a pastor, right? That's cliche sounding, but you know what? I have been guilty of this, and I'm guessing that you probably have too, that it's way easier said than done, because I get into my mode, like I'm sitting at the keyboard right now on this video set, and my hands just naturally want to go to the piano and start just singing and playing and, thinking, oh, I like that song. Oh, that would go this good with this song. And that's not a bad place to be. But we got to get there. We can't start there. Okay. So number one, pray about it. Now, just don't forget to ask God, like, hey, what do you want for this Sunday? Because I guarantee you that each one of you can probably pull 5 songs together in similar keys and it'd be fine. But there's a bit more to it than that. So spend time praying about it. Don't forget to ask God for his guidance, and spend time in prayer, asking God about, what he has in mind for the weekend, and just make sure that you are preparing and posturing your heart to be in a place where you're ready. You're ready to receive. And then from there, as you go, you'll have that foundation laid already, and you'll be one step ahead and feel a little more like fueled and ready to pour into this set list. And I just got to go off on a little bit of a side tangent here. And if you've been a podcast listener for a while, you're not surprised. So here's the thing. We as worship leaders cannot sacrifice our time with the Lord on the altar of busy and on the altar of administrative tasks. Because look, I get it. 80 to 90% of your job is administrative. And I know that because I've been there over and over and over and over again. And I can easily get lost in administrative tasks because they just pile up. But we have to make sure that our spiritual lives are priority, because as I was just chatting with somebody that I've been mentoring for a couple years and training, we were chatting this morning about we can't lead people to a place that we haven't been and that we don't go frequently, right? We got to know the way. And so that goes right hand in hand with this first step of the set list checklist, is to pray about it. Ask God before you even dive into starting to pen pen all of those songs. Okay. So that's number one. Now there's several points on this checklist. Okay. And I'm going to give you the first few, but then you're going to have to go to our website and grab the rest of it. Okay. All right. Number two is research it. Now, I'm a researcher by nature. I love details and systems and all of that, and I can get lost in them really quickly. And sometimes I have to have people like yank me back out of them. Like, stop, don't do it. Don't go down the vortex of research. But this is really, really important. And I think that's why I have found so much success with this system, because this is a step you cannot skip. Okay. So what do I mean by research it? I mean, take a holistic view at your church and the coming weeks. All right. So I'm not going to go into the broad perspective today, like mission, vision, values, like all of that, because we've talked about that already and touched on it. There's a lot more that could be said, but I'm talking within the confines of, like, we're way specific. This is a Sunday set list or an Easter set list. And here's the thing. I'm telling you guys this now, so maybe you can use it for Easter because it's coming. Okay. All right. So research it. Take a holistic view at the coming weeks. So, like, what songs have been done recently? And I always like to go, if you use Planning Center, which I love because it's just, they've done such a stellar job. It's so awesome. But if you look at the matrix view and you kind of look back at the weeks prior and think, okay, so we've done that song a lot. We've done that song a lot. We maybe need to give that one a rest. That one didn't really click with people. We've done it enough times, right? So, and then think about, okay, what song resonated? Man, that song, like right now, we just started doing gratitude at our home church. And I did it as like a little transition song with just the bridge and the chorus a few weeks ago. And there were so many people that came up to me afterwards and were like, I love that song so much. Cause it's not a new song, but you know, it's been on the radio and like people have heard it for months and a couple years now. But it's like that resonated like big time. And so I keep those things in mind, and just also then take a look at what holidays have just passed and what holidays are coming up, right? So like the week after Christmas or the 2 weeks after Christmas, we're thinking about, all right, Christmas was all December. So we didn't do a lot of non-holiday themed songs or, you know, hymn Christmas type songs, but we also, you know, had to introduce a lot of new songs. So you just kind of think just context, right? Because we don't want to always be throwing people curveballs of all the new or all the, you know, all the of one style, all hymns or all non. So just take that into consideration. We are going to take a quick pause from today's episode because I have a free gift for you. You know, leading worship is a big deal. And as much as the responsibility thrills you, it also can be a little daunting, right? And I know because I've been there. As someone who's led worship for more than 20 years, I know how stressful prepping for the weekend set can be because let's face it, Sunday's always coming. So I've developed a checklist that I go through every single time I'm preparing a set list for an upcoming service, and it really helps a lot. I feel confident, I feel prepared. It saves me time because let's face it, volunteer, you're probably spending precious evening time working because you're just trying to fit it all in. And so this helps you work smart and saves you time. And most importantly, it just helps me make sure that nothing falls through the cracks. It's helped me for 20 years and I'm giving it to you for free. So click the link in the show notes or head on over to overflowworship.com/setlist checklist to get yours today. All right, back to today's episode. And then, you know, thinking like, are there any new songs? Now, one thing that's really valuable when you're thinking in regards to new songs is I would recommend putting together a list of new songs that you want to do every quarter or half year or year, whatever works for you from a time frame, and then let your team know like, hey, these are the 5 new songs we're going to introduce over the next 6 months, right? So then they kind of know in advance as well. That's kind of a side note, but just take all those things into consideration. All right. So we've said, pray about it. Okay. Ask God. And then we've said, research it. Take a holistic view at the current schedule, the history and the coming weeks. I'm not talking history like 6 years ago. I'm like the last month or 6 weeks. Okay. Um, and think about holidays, past and upcoming, new songs, and feedback, right? We talked about that. If people are like, oh, I loved that song, I think that's really valuable to pay attention to, right? And I will say, and many of you know this, if you have a couple people that are like, I hated that song, I didn't like it, it was hard to sing, like we take it with a grain of salt, right? But we also cannot please everybody. So that doesn't mean you have to throw that song out. But I'd say if you had, you know, 15 or 20 people say like, man, that was a different song. It was really hard to sing. Well, maybe you need to give it another time or two to let people learn it. But after that, if you still get that feedback, then maybe you do let it go. But I understand that you can't please everybody. There's always going to be one or two that they're just not going to go for it. Okay. Pray about it, research it. And then the next thing is list it. Make a list of all the songs you came up with in step 2, right? Like you researched it and you kind of thought about like the songs you're not going to do and maybe some of the new songs. And then you're also going to have come up with, through that research it phase, a list of songs that you're considering in your head, right? Like, oh, this one's good. This one could be good, right? Because you've got the historical context. So you kind of honed your list of 100 songs in Planning Center down to 10 or 15, right? So new, old, anything that might work for Sunday, list it. And sometimes, guys, if I'm just totally blank, like I have no idea, I will literally go to the song list in Planning Center and just scroll, or like go to my iTunes or Spotify or whatever and just scroll to try to jog my memory. Sometimes I just have, like a brain fog or something, and I need to just refresh. So make a list of all the songs that you are thinking about and just write it down. Write it on the notes in your phone or whatever the case may be, and have that list. Okay. So now you've got this list of like 10 or 15, right? Now, what are you going to do with it? Because you're not going to do 15 songs on Sunday morning, probably, maybe for a worship night, but even that would be really long. I think the Overflow worship night, we usually have about 12 to 14, but we often will not do the entire song of some of those, or we'll cut one on the fly. So anyways, that's random. But after you list it, now you've got this and you're like, oh, what am I going to do with it? Okay. So now you're going to key it. Okay. You see the theme, pray about it, research it, list it, key it. So just consider key signatures. You want songs that can flow in same or similar keys. So like consider, do you have some guys leading, some girls leading on the same Sunday? So you have to make sure that you are picking keys that work for them, but that also transition and flow well together. I'm not saying that you can't go from F sharp to B flat, but your band might ask you not to do that, especially your guitar players. But it's not that you can't go from F sharp to B flat, but if you think about it, it's kind of one of those things that, well, how am I going to transition well without interrupting the atmosphere of worship? Okay. And I could talk all day long about transitions. Okay. I'll save that for another time. We're not going to do that here, but just think about those things. Similar keys, transitions, tracks. Do you have tracks or not? Because that will impact how the set flows. Or is it like, well, we don't use tracks for anything in the slow set, but we use it in the the faster songs. So like 2 faster songs, we use tracks, and then the other 2 we don't. Well, that's valuable to know because that will impact your transition. So maybe your 2 fast songs need to be in the same key or a close key so that you can flow without any issue. Okay. So then from there, you're going to easily begin to refine that big list of 15 down to 7 or less. And it's really important to consider keys that flow together, but they're also singable for the non-singer, not just you. Cause like, I like to sing in certain keys because I feel like it's fun because I'm a singer, but that doesn't mean that it's going to encourage the corporate body to come along with us, right? They might just be like, I can't do that. I don't know if you've ever had this happen, but it's like they're singing a song where there's the octave jump, right? That happens in a lot of tenor songs. And it's actually, difficult for female voices to find the right key for that. Do you not do the octave jump? Do you do it? Like what? And, you're like going and singing and everybody's singing, and then you jump the octave and the congregation just kind of goes, uh, and they just look at you like, I got lost, right? So just consider the non-singer, right? Because it needs to work for you so you can lead it, but it needs to encourage them and make it possible for them to follow, right? It makes me think of like if, I mean, I'm not a runner. I don't know why this popped into my mind, but like, let's say I'm going to train to run a 5K and I'm training with a very experienced runner. Well, they are not going to sprint right out of the chute and be like, come on, keep up with me. Like if they're a good trainer, they're going to train and teach you at your pace while still pushing you to grow. Like they're still going to push me to grow, but they're not going to start, at a really difficult level because I just wouldn't be able to keep up, right? So it's very similar when you're choosing set lists. You just want to make sure that the songs that you're singing are singable and approachable for the non-singer. Now, nobody get upset and be like, well, then we can't do this song and this song. And I'm not saying that. Maybe you do that song, but you keep the other ones more familiar, more singable, more like simpler melodies and that kind of thing. So it's not all these really complex, long, confusing or difficult songs. Okay. So we have said, pray about it. We said, research it. That's going to help you make that list, right? And then list it, write it down. Think about the ones you're not going to do, the new ones you are going to do, and list it out. Okay. Then you're going to key it. Consider the key signatures, all your people, all the transitions, all the things that you might need to consider from a standpoint of, your team and the congregation. And now I'm going to give you one more tip, and then you have to get the rest of it. You heard it in the commercial a little bit earlier, right? You have to get the rest of it on our website. Okay. So the last tip I'm going to give you now and leave you hanging is order it. Now it's time to pick your final order and flow. So you select the final songs from your list. Consider placement in the service, right? Like, do you split it up? Is it one opening song and then a break and then, you do some more? You really got to consider all of that. And, like if all 4 songs, you're doing 4 and they all flow together, you'll want to keep them in similar keys. But if you have one up front and then announcements and 2 more songs, well, this front one could be in F sharp and these could be in B flat. It doesn't matter, right? Because there's a break. So get your order. Okay. So with all of this, yes, you could stop, right? We've pretty much taken you to a place where it's like, okay, yep, you could stop. But there are a few more 3 more tips that I have in my set list checklist, and then 2 more bonus tips. So really it's 5 more tips that I have in the set list checklist for you to help you really bring it to a great spot where you're like, okay, I have tested this and honed this and refined this. And the good news about it is this doesn't like take hours and hours and hours. It's actually meant to simplify, not complicate. So you use these check marks as a lens. Like, okay, did I pray about it? Okay, did I do a quick research? It's not like you have to spend hours on all of these things, right? Can I pray about it? Did I do a little bit of research? Yep, I looked through Planning Center. Okay, great. Did I list it out? Yep, there's my, 10 to 15 songs, or maybe if you're experienced, you're like, 6 or 7 is good, right? And then you get it in order, right? You start thinking about, okay, now how am I going to put this in order? Okay. So then from there, I've got 5 more for you in the set list checklist that will help you take it home and make it a success for you every single time. Okay. So I really want to see you thrive. And that's why I'm telling you guys these things. I don't have time for the rest of it today, but you can head on over to overflowworship.com/setlist checklist and you can get all of it today. You can download the whole thing, take a look at it. Let me know what you think about it. Let me know how it helps you, because I would absolutely love to hear from you and love to hear how it's helping you. But also, I want to continue to learn. So what do you do? I'd love to hear from you. find us on socials. We're at Overflow Worship Official on all the platforms, and just send us a message or tag us in a comment on one of our posts and say, hey, this is how I plan Setlist, because I want to learn too, because I bet you there are so many people out there who have awesome ideas that we could add to this Setlist checklist. So please reach out. So that wraps up the rest of the episode for today of the Overflow Worship Podcast. And just remember, we are giving you the free setlist checklist at overflowworship.com/setlist checklist, and you can grab it today. And also, I just wanted to remind you that it really helps us a lot when you head over to Apple Podcasts and you leave us a written review, because it not only helps us know what content is relevant, like, hey, type it out and let us know what you liked about it. But also those reviews really do help us reach more people and makes us more searchable on the podcast platform so that we can continue to bless worship leaders all over the world. So if you would take 30 seconds and head over to Apple Podcasts and do that, we would be so grateful. All right, that's it for our first video episode of the Overflow Worship Podcast. I cannot wait until next time. Until then, be blessed.